We all think we know what makes children laugh, but can we really explain it? And is it useful for educators to be aware of how children's humour works? Well, to answer these questions, I'd like to tell you about the large-scale study on the humour of primary school children that I was commissioned to carry out 2 years ago. The aim of the study was to find out what children find funny in their everyday lives, both at school and at home. We wanted to know how children used humour to interact with each other. For example, when they were in the playground, we wanted to know what sort of jokes they told one another and which ones were most popular. Some research was done in this area about 50 years ago, but it's never been followed up. So that's one area that we wanted to find out more about in our research. And we also wanted to find out about what children find funny when they're at home watching television, since many children spend quite a significant amount of time doing this. So how did we go about finding out this information? Well, we interviewed a total of 150 children in 6 different primary schools around the city. We had originally intended to have one-to-one interviews, but we decided that this would be too time-consuming and also might be stressful for the children. So instead, each interviewer had several groups, each consisting of 3 or 4 children. They were asked questions like, "What was the last thing that made you laugh?" and "Do you know any funny stories?" Then another method we used to collect information about what makes children laugh was through the use of humour diaries. So we asked the parents of some of the children to keep a diary like this for 6 months, and to describe situations in which their children had laughed. So what were the main findings? Well, some of them weren't quite what you'd have expected. You'd think that people laugh when things are funny, but that's not always the case. One thing we found was that children nearly always laugh if they're in a situation which is unfamiliar to them. They're a bit nervous because they're not sure what sort of action it's appropriate for them to take, so they laugh. Another type of situation in which we found children often laughed was when people did things which were surprising. If someone's walking down the street with a dog on a lead, that's quite unsurprising. But if someone's got a chicken on a lead, the child will laugh because the usual conventions that govern our behaviour aren't being followed. It's funny because it's surprising. Another interesting area is what sort of person makes children laugh most. And here we found that nearly all primary school children find situations particularly humorous if they involve people looking foolish, and particularly if these are adults. The children probably find this empowering, to see them at a disadvantage for once. One thing that was observed frequently in the humour diaries was that laughter often erupted spontaneously during pretend games and role play. Our research showed there's a strong link between laughter and being creative. It's an area that's received little attention to date, maybe because this type of humour isn't often observed in research situations. As well as these, there were other findings that we made during the research process. One quite surprising finding was the fact that when looking at what children find funny, there seems to be hardly any difference between boys and girls, so the children's gender doesn't seem to be significant. Boys sometimes show a slight preference for physical humour, but there's nothing much in it. For educators, as well as for those involved in children's media, it's worth stressing that children still find many of the same things funny as they did in the past. There hasn't been much change in what they laugh at over the years. If you look at what makes children laugh in the 21st century, there's really not much difference from what made their grandparents laugh in the 20th century. They still react positively to the same sort of things. So, for example, in the media, They enjoy humour which is non-verbal, where the humour comes from pictures rather than words. And one of the most striking findings that came out of our research, both the interviews and the diaries, is that just as in their grandparents' generation, what children find incredibly funny is humour that is founded on some kind of danger. The fact that they know it isn't real gives them permission to laugh somehow. So what we can conclude from all this is that humour is incredibly important to children. It plays a crucial role.